Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends Podcast. With me today is a man who needs no introduction. It is Jonathan Small. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
Hello, Dyson. It's good to see you again. Thanks for having me back on.
So, what is the topic we're going to talk about today?
Yes, so this is something that crops up quite frequently on the forums, and it's people will say that if you're in a certain area, that's what's going to define your fees or the success of your business, and they say that's the kind of the most important thing, and I don't believe it is. I don't think the location of your business really makes that much difference. I think what makes the most difference to the success of business is where your own head is at. And so I'd like to just explore that today with you. If you remember when you came over to the Foot and Ankle Show in 2019, I think it was, you came over to the UK. And I did a talk on this at the Foot and Ankle Show. One of the people who watched the talk rated it as the best 10-minute talk they'd ever seen. So I'm hoping we can cover some of the information we did then.
Yeah, it was a very good talk. But I will admit that I've heard a lot of podiatrists when you're talking about fees, for example, and you might say, you should put this up a bit. And they go, oh, yeah, but you don't understand. The people in my socioeconomic area couldn't afford to pay that. And I'm like, is that true or isn't it true? Because if they can buy cigarettes and alcohol, then they can afford to spend money on other things.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's all about what you prioritize, and that isn't dictated by your socioeconomic group necessarily. Obviously, at the very lowest end, then it is, because that's just survival mode. That's just making sure you get food and a roof over your head. But anything above that, then it becomes a choice as to what you spend your money on.
Yeah, I agree, because I know there are some areas, and there probably are some people, just their situation is terrible. They don't have the money. They really don't have the money. But at the same time, they're probably not really thinking about their feet too much at the time either. They're in survival mode, like you said. I've seen areas where they're supposedly low socioeconomic area, but the younger people there are driving hotted up cars with big mag wheels. And so they've got the money to spend on things, like you said, that they feel is a priority.
Absolutely, and it's just really, when I say it matters where your head is at, it's about how you actually approach your business and understanding that who your ideal patient is. We talk about that a lot with marketing, don't we? And accepting that really what you want to be and putting in as your ideal patient are people who are willing to invest in their own health. If you're running a private healthcare business, that's going to be part of the criteria for your ideal customer. No point attracting people who don't want to invest in their own health.
Yeah, well, remember when you were in Australia last year, you did the Work Smarter, Not Harder 2-day thing. And I remember drawing the map of Australia, which was really funny. I did the map of Australia, and then people would say where they lived, and I had to guess where it was on the map.
Yeah.
But the variation in the fees that people were charging for exactly the same thing, there was almost like a $50 difference in some consultations, where one person was charging $75 and the other was charging $125 for exactly the same thing. And I think everybody in the room that day were looking at each other going, oh, and where you live is not really that much different to where I live. Why am I not charging the same?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is it. It isn't about where they are. That's the point. It's not about looking at what other people are charging in your environment. The whole point of building a successful business is you come up with what you want to offer as your business, and you decide what level of income you want for yourself and what level of income you need for the business in order for it to be sustainable. And then you come up with your value proposition to the clients so that actually they're willing to invest in your business. You have to come up with that value proposition, whatever that is, and then you have to market that to them, to those ideal customers.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting, if you look at, let's use McDonald's as an example, whether McDonald's is set up in an area where there's people who got a higher income, or they're in an area where it's a really low income, the burgers are the same price. It doesn't change. McDonald's don't go, oh, this is a low socioeconomic area. They can't afford $8.50 for a burger. So we're going to only make them $4.50 for the identical burger, because then everyone from the other areas go, oh, I'm going to drive there and go get them a burger.
I use the same example for new cars. New cars don't vary in price according to where you're driving them. They're the same price. They're set by the manufacturer to cover all their overheads. That's
Yeah.
it. And building some profit for themselves. And that's the same wherever you are. And so I don't know why we get it in our head. You can only charge what everybody else is charging in your area. That's not the way to price up a business. That's not the way to price up your own value proposition.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because there's a lot of businesses, industries where the price does not change regardless of where they are. And they're in every different socioeconomic area, but the price stays the same.
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the things when it comes to location is people will say you need to be somewhere where you get lots of footfall. You need to be in a busy location. Now I'm in a small market town, and that's not got the biggest population. I think it was something like 7,500 in our area in 3-mile radius of the clinic. And I've got nearly 8,000 patients registered on my book. So in theory, I've attracted every single person in that 3-mile radius, which isn't how it works, of course.
Yeah.
So it's not what's happened. People have travelled to come and see me. And yeah, you don't need to be in a busy location. And the one example that I keep checking out, even to this day, because when I wrote that talk way back for Ankle Show in 2019, I came across a restaurant called Ynyshyr, which is Ynyshyr. And if people go to the website, that's .co.uk, and have a look at how they market themselves. They've got 204 Google reviews, and a 4.8 rating. They're in the middle of nowhere with no real population at all. The nearest larger population is many miles away, and yet they're a restaurant that way back then they were charging £150 per person for lunch or dinner. Now they're more than double that price 4 years later. And it raised the question for me of how many podiatry clinics in 4 years have gone, okay, we need to double our fees in order for us to survive, to thrive after COVID. And I bet you there's not very many. Yet this restaurant's doing really well for itself and keeps going with it, and it's not about its location.
Yeah, I think I've seen a documentary on that restaurant on one of those cooking shows. I'm pretty sure that restaurant, and it is in the middle of nowhere.
That's it.
But people will travel there based on the reputation that they know when they go there. It's going to be an experience. The food's going to be good. So people will travel if the reputation is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point of us marketing it is to get that reputation to land, that message of the reputation to land on the public who are willing to receive that message, really, who want to hear that message. I've had a patient who travelled all the way from Scotland to come and see me at my clinic, and they got in touch in advance. And I said, why don't you go and see a colleague down the road that I can recommend to you? And it's only a 20-mile journey for you to go to the colleague down the road, as opposed to a 300-400 mile trip to come and see me. And they still chose to come and see me. And I hear of patients who are moving around the country, really, just traveling to the person they've heard is going to help them, even though we know that on their doorstep there may be somebody who's just as capable of helping them, but their marketing message isn't reaching that person. Instead, they're getting the messages for another clinic in another county or whatever.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm one of those people that if I needed something, say I needed surgery on my shoulder, for example, or ankle surgery, whatever it was, I wouldn't necessarily just look in my own backyard for that. I would be looking at who has a reputation for being one of the best for the shoulders or for their ankle, and I would travel to make sure they got done, because to me, my health is important. I need my shoulder working, I need my ankles working, so I'd be prepared to spend the money and travel to someone who is actually building up a reputation of being very good in that particular area.
Absolutely, and that's what's really quite daft about it all, because you could get somebody who's really good who markets themselves and somebody who's really good who doesn't market themselves. So which one do you end up seeing? It's going to be the person that you hear about because of marketing. They can be both really good, but if somebody's not shouting about how good they are, then you're not going to go and see them. So that could be that around the corner from you could be somebody who's perfectly good enough to sort out your shoulder, but they just don't tell anybody they're good at doing it. So you go and see the person who's 100 miles away who does tell you that they're good at doing it and uses the marketing channels that are out there in order to get that message across to you.
Yeah, and I know some people might hear this and go, oh, okay, so they're just saying the person that markets themselves, they may not be as good. And you know what? That might be the case. But what you're saying, that's why it's important for the person who is better to be making sure they're out there marketing. But to debunk that idea that the person that's marketing may not be as good, if they weren't very good, it'll be reflected in the Google ratings as well. So if they're doing a lot of marketing, attracting a lot of people, and you're thinking, oh, it's only because of all the marketing they're attracting people. Yes. But before I would go and see them, I would look at ratings, reviews, other people, different comments.
Testimonials, those sort of things, yeah.
It doesn't matter how much marketing they do. If they're no good at what they do, the word gets around pretty quickly that they're not very good.
Exactly. And the other thing is when you do go down that route of saying to people you're good at doing something, is that you have to deliver on that. You have to raise your game, because people are going to come to you and going to expect you to be good at it. So it does make you raise your game, either with new tools in your toolbox, or learning the CPD, or a good referral network, whatever it is that makes you able to help solve those patients' problems.
Yeah. Another thing I find interesting is in some of these areas where, let's say they're in a lower socioeconomic area, when you talk to those podiatrists and you'll be talking to them about their fees, they're also the ones that have got a badge on their chest saying, I'm booked out 2 months ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're booked out 2 months ahead. You're undercharging. Can you not see the correlation there about supply and demand? Obviously, there's people that want to come and see you. You're obviously probably good at what you do, which is why they keep coming back. Yet you don't want to charge more because you don't think they can afford it. They can afford it if you're good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. If you give them the result that they can't get elsewhere, then you're worth it. You're worth paying for, aren't you?
Yeah. Let me tell you a story that happened last week when we went down to Airlie Beach for a week. Had a great time down there, had the world's best mojito. That's what it said on the Google board anyway, world's best mojito. Yeah. So, of course, I got sucked in by marketing, and it was a pretty good mojito. They should also have a board up there that says world's best seafood chowder, because, oh my God, it was amazing. The place next door could go world's best steak and one of the world's best buffalo wings. But I digress. Let me get back onto my story. When we're driving back from Airlie Beach to Cairns, which is about just over a 7-hour drive, so it's not that far. And in England, I just drove from one end to the other.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
So we're driving back, and we get this little town called Cardwell, which is just you only ever stop in Cardwell to either put fuel in your car or get something to eat. So Cardwell is halfway between Cairns and Townsville, about a 4-hour drive. Cardwell's two hours, right in the middle. So normally you'll get up early in the morning to drive to Townsville, and you'll have breakfast at Cardwell, or fill up the car and keep going. Anyway, as we're heading north back through Cardwell, the next town is Tully. Floods. The road's cut off. We had to stay in Cardwell. Nobody ever stays in Cardwell. You don't want to stay in Cardwell. There's no reason to. But as we get there, we realised roads are cut off. I said to Christine, let's book a room, because I will guarantee there's a lot of people coming through today, and I don't want to be sleeping out in the street in the car. So we ring up the motel there, and we said, oh, how much is the room? $140. It's the last room. We'll take it. So we took it. We're in our room. We're sitting out the front, and all of a sudden everybody, and you check in through the bottle shop, which is unique. So they said, to get your key, just drive to the bottle shop, in the drive-through, come in, you get your key, grab a 6-pack of beer as well. Not a problem. Yeah. So we're sitting out the front, and all of a sudden I'm talking to the guy next to me, and he said, yeah, he said, yeah, lucky you're. He said, oh, I got the room. I said, oh, how much did you pay? He goes, I paid $100. I said, you paid $100? He said, yeah. And then the guy on the other side said, what did you pay? He said, I paid $120. He said, but I got the last room. I said, that's funny. I paid $140. We got the last room. Then the other person down the end, we paid $150. We got the last room. Then this guy comes walking through from the bottom, waving keys above his head. Hey, $170, just got the last room. Yeah. And then the guy who paid $100, he was at the restaurant. He came back laughing his head off. He said, just talking to the guy in the restaurant, you got the last room for $200. So this place, I probably had about 50 rooms, and it's probably never been booked out a day. And it's since the time it's been built, except whenever there's a flood. But to me, that was a perfect example of supply and demand.
Supply and demand, yeah, absolutely. But that's what happens with airlines, isn't it? Your flight prices go up as the seats sell. That's what happens. Unless they've got some spaces at the end, close to when it's taking off, and then they might lower the prices. But generally, they're going to go up the closer you are to the flight date as they sell more seats.
And that's what was happening with this motel. It was like they normally charge 100. They charged 100. People pay that. Then they probably thought, oh, we're getting a few calls. Just make it 120, see what happens. Nobody complained. Even the guy I'm sure that paid $200 might be going, oh, I'd probably prefer not to pay 200. But you know what? If the choice is to sleep out in my car, out on the street in Cardwell, which is not what you want to do, the $200 was well worth it. So I think anybody that's in a town where they think, oh, I can't charge that, if the service you're providing is worth it, and I always say, test the waters, bump it up a little bit, no one complains, bump up a little bit more, no one complains. It's just test it out over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's that thing that just because one business is charging such amount doesn't mean another business has to charge the same amount. Now, in that Cardwell example, you had one motel. There was no competitor to actually choose.
There was actually, I think there's 3 motels.
Okay.
But they were all the same, exactly the same standard quality, pretty much in the same area. It was just, they all made a killing that night.
Yeah. So the example I used in that talk way back then was about 2 macaroon shops that we'd spotted in Belgium next door to each other. And the one shop was selling in the window 10 macaroons for €16.50. So that's 1.65 euros per macaroon. Right next door to it, there was a macaroons for sale in the window, and they were €4.95 for one macaroon. So how do they both survive? How does that work? Because if everybody's buying just on price, going for the cheapest, they're going to go for the one that it works out at 165, not the one that's 4.95. And so there must be something else going on within the psychology of spending that means that both can exist next door to each other. And we see that with a run of car shops. You get car shops selling new cars, and you get all the different brands along one street at different price points. It won't be that you're all matching the same price or you're matching the same quality of vehicle. It's very different between each of the vehicle sales places. And this is the whole point, that you decide what your business is going to look like. You decide the price you need to be charging, and you present that to the patients. And then let the patients decide if they want to buy into it. That's not you going, oh, I'll just charge the same as everybody else, or I'll just set up my business exactly the same as everybody else. And you know this because of the way you did your business, about making it somewhere that was different, that stood out compared to another podiatry practice. And you did it. I remember you telling me about your superhero rooms. When they're sat in the waiting room, they want to go in a certain room because that's the name of that superhero. And we need to make our businesses stand out, and particularly podiatry. As a profession, we need to make ourselves stand out so that the people realise that we're the go-to places for foot-related problems, that they don't go to every other healthcare professional in the first place before they end up on our doorstep. And the other example I'd come across with regard to that was about a dentist that I'd seen. And they'd come up with a really good way of getting patients to get involved in their dental practice, actually to come along and be part of it. And what they'd done was they'd come up with a fun scheme for the children to come along. So it was like a good smile club, and they'd marketed it. And what they'd come up with this lifelong sparkle club, the Mini Sparklers Club, and they called their place Nothing But the Tooth. That's not just a Joe Blogg's dental practice. It was really good. And when you read the reviews, it says, we go to the best dentist in the area. But the most striking thing about it, that is not all about the patient. It is a group of professionals within a team that look after us as a patient, and not just look after your teeth. So they're getting reviews saying the whole thing, the whole business is something that people buy into. And I think it's this thing that we just set up and we go, oh, we're just another podiatry practice. And we're not. We're our business. It's the way we want to market it, the way we want to develop it that matters. And that's why I say it's more important where your own head is at rather than looking at what your competitors are charging or how your competitors are set up. Yeah.
And it's true because, like, I find it funny when you have someone that charges a lot less than they probably should charge. When I remember at one particular point, I've used this example before, when when majority of clinics in Cairns were charging $85 for a particular service, and we were charging $125. Patients would ring up, and these are some of the patients that were probably ringing around getting prices.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our fee's $125, and they go, $125? I go, yeah, and they go, it's only $85 at the guy down the road. And I go, oh, if they're charging $85 and we're charging $125, we must be doing something different. And they went, obviously. I said, so would you like a morning or afternoon appointment? They go, a morning appointment would be fine.
Yeah.
Rarely did we get anybody. I know you're too expensive. We're gonna go to the other guy down the road. I think these people that are trying to keep their prices really low because they think people can't afford it, they're going to attract a certain type of person. But also, I actually reckon if these patients actually thought that you thought that they were lower standard than the average person in the street, they would be pissed off.
Yeah.
They would probably knife you in your clinic if they really thought, oh, so you only charge this because you think we're down and out and are not worthy of.
We can't afford proper fees. Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I would be pissed off if somebody looked at me, because sometimes I don't always dress the best. But I like going pretty casual. But if somebody looked down on me and was thinking that I couldn't afford something just because of the way I looked, or maybe an area that I lived in, and I have been judged in the past.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I have, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story. I've never told this on the podcast before. And anyone who's about to listen to this, please grab your tissues. This is sad. But when I was at uni, so I grew up in an area of Brisbane that was not the best area in the world. I used to call it the Bronx of Brisbane. And so it was a terrible area. So I get to uni, and when I'm at uni, we had this study group. We used to go around to people's house. Yeah, we rotate around each other's house. Oh, I'm starting to get the shits even just thinking about this. Anyway, as we went around to each other's house, this one particular week, one of the girls went, oh, sorry, you can't come over. I said, oh, why is that? Oh, my parents don't want anyone from your area in their house. I've never seen that before, but I was so pissed off.
Yeah, I bet.
That I'm doing podiatry with these people. I went through school. I got the marks. I got in just like everybody else did. But their parents didn't want me in their house because I didn't go to the right school or brought up in the right area. You can tell by my face right now.
Yeah. I remember I was on holiday once and we had a camper van, and I knew that we needed to look at a new car, and I wanted to look at a car. We pulled into the car sales room in our tatty old camper van, because that's what we had, and dressed as on holiday, so nothing smart. We're camping, and the car salesman literally said, no point talking to you because you're not going to buy, so I'm not going to even talk to you because you clearly can't afford it. Flipping heck, really?
and I think that's what gets under my skin when we're on this subject and people talk about people in low socioeconomic areas, because that's where I grew up. That was not me. Just because I grew up in that area, I had a bloody good life. We had a fantastic life, family and all that. We used to go out, do things. We had a great life. But I grew up in it. I grew up in one of those areas. And like I said, when I hear podiatrists say, I can't put my fees up because they can't afford it, and you're judging them, it just gets under my skin so much. And good part though, that person that parents wouldn't let me in their house because I was from a bad area, it motivated me. And I used that motivation once I got out of uni to push myself, and I always remind myself of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
And it just basically keeps pushing me.
It does, yeah. It just keeps pushing you to prove them wrong, isn't it? It's who are they to judge you? And if you remember on Work Smart and Harder, I did a section on don't judge wealth status. It's not our job to judge what people can or can't afford. That's not our role. We're not trained to do it. We shouldn't be going anywhere near that in our professional capacity. It's way overstepping the mark. We should just say, this is the price, and let the patient decide.
Yeah, I've told the story before where I had one lady came in one day, big black Mercedes Benz, and she had a big buffy hair and gold jewelry everywhere. And she was a lawyer, I think. Came in, told her how much the orthotics were. Oh, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to pay that. And in my head, I'm thinking, you're a lawyer. I know what you charge. But anyway, didn't argue. Next lady comes in. She worked part-time at the local primary school as a cleaner. She was wearing a shirt that if I wore that out of the house, my wife would slap me. Yeah, she wasn't dressed the best, had old shoes on. Anyway, I explained the cost of orthotics to her exactly the same way. And after I told her, she went, well, I save my money so I can look after my health. So that seems reasonable. If I wanted to get a second pair, how much would that be? And I told her, she went, oh, the only reason I ask is because I have a pair of shoes at work and a pair of shoes at home. And I think it'd be good just to leave one pair at work and one pair at home. But my shoes are a bit old. I notice you have joggers out the front. Would you recommend I buy new shoes? And I'm looking at her shoes that were totally worn out. I went, yeah. Anyway, she spent $1,500 that day.
Yeah.
Didn't even flinch on the price. Yeah, I'll guarantee you, I know, I looked at the suburb where she was from, and she was from a low socioeconomic area. And my clinic was not in the best area of Cairns either.
Yeah, I would hazard a guess that from all the patients I've seen over the years, those who would appear to not be able to afford it are the ones who turn around and go, that seems like a reasonable fee. Yeah. As opposed to those who clearly can afford it are the ones who go, how much? I'm not paying that. Yeah. But it also comes down to this thing of how we portray ourselves, how we put ourselves out into the world and our business out into the world. And another thing that we covered in that talk was about this silver mine in Wales. A silver mine in Wales, where they've got old-fashioned machinery lying around and nothing that exciting, nothing that engaging for anybody for them to go to that museum. But they decided to completely rethink their marketing. And they changed it from you just come and have a look at our worn out machinery that we used to mine with. And they turned it into the Silver Mountain experience, where you could go on different tours, either a Dragon's Tail or a Miner's Life guided tour or the Black Chasm tour. And it really spoke to you to say, this is somewhere exciting to go to, which you'd never think of for a very museum full of old machinery. And it's this thing that we've got to be creative in how we put ourselves out there, so the public actually do go, yeah, that's somewhere that I'm going to engage with. That's somewhere I want to go to get stuff sorted for myself.
So a lot of it, though, it's our mindset. It's how we perceive ourselves. And it's putting the perception that we want out there and then trying to find the patients that want that same perception, that are wanting that particular trait. Because I'm thinking, if you don't have a good opinion of yourself and you're working in an area where you think nobody else has a good opinion of themselves, then you're going to be a perfect match. And therefore, you're never going to even think about increasing your fees because you are not worthy. Because you're going to keep telling yourself you're not worthy. Whereas you've got to lift, I think you've got to lift up your own spirits and your own mindset as well.
Absolutely. You've got to value yourself as a human being and as the professional that you are for solving the problems for the patient, for whatever that is something that I'm really quite passionate about when in our profession, is that people seem to be quite easy to charge for what we call sports podiatry. If they've come in with heel pain or something like that, they can go, yeah, that's a decent fee. But the patient comes in with a corn or some hard skin and they go, no, I can't charge those fees. And I'm going, why not? It's a problem for the patient. It's not for us to judge how important that problem is for them. Let them decide, is the corn as important as the heel pain? And we shouldn't be varying our fees according to what the condition is. It should be, this is it to see you as a podiatrist. But the other thing that's, I think, really important when we're exploring this about developing our business and building it to provide that value proposition for the patient is to realize that the world and the universe isn't static. It's always evolving, and our businesses always need to evolve. Yeah. Because of that, it's that thing, isn't it? When you're ripe, you're rotting. So we can't just keep static. You can't just build it and then stop, because then that's again where your head's not going to be in the right place. You need to be transforming, because that's the key to continued success. We just have to keep on bringing on new things in order that the business thrives and evolves. No successful business stays still. A classic example will be Amazon, isn't it? Amazon started off in a garage selling books, or
Yeah,
their
pretty
small office
much.
or whatever. Yeah, yeah. And if it had stayed doing that, would it be the global empire that it is now? No, it wouldn't.
Mm.
Yeah, it's constantly evolving, constantly changing, and all the big businesses do, and they'll try things and they may not work. It might not be for them. So this week, wasn't it Apple who've turned their back on vehicles when they were looking at EV vehicles? But so they'll try things, but you've got to keep trying to evolve, to go with the flow of the times, rather than just getting set in your ways and getting stuck. Because when you get stuck, that's when you're not acting out your comfort zone. You're just in your comfort zone, and you're going to start to rot.
I know there's a lot of podiatrists that put a lot of time and effort into CPD, becoming a better podiatrist. They'll learn how to treat heel pain even better, learn new techniques, and they go off and do this constant training. And I think that is a fantastic thing. We all need to be doing that. But I still think everybody needs to be allocating a certain amount of time to just become a better human being, a better person, a better version of themselves. And ask yourself, when was the last time you went and picked up an autobiography of a successful person and read it? Or just a motivational book? And it doesn't need to be a business book, just a book that inspires you or makes you think about yourself, that you look at the world differently. So I think everybody should be allocating a certain amount of time for self-improvement on top of, so even when we do our registration, they might say, you got to do 20 hours of CPD. I reckon it should be, and at least 20 hours of stuff that you've worked on your mind to make you just a better version of yourself in a year's time, 5 years time, or 10 years time.
Absolutely. And of course, that's also about who you surround yourself with as well. If you surround yourself with negative people, you're going to be a negative person. You surround yourself with positive people, you're going to be a positive person. And that's really important, that you identify people in your circle that may not be helping you with your journey and your growth journey to get to that better tomorrow and be that better version of yourself. And if that's the case, then move on. Don't get stuck in that place.
Yeah, I did a talk many years ago in Warwick, and it was for a group of health professionals. The government approached me and said, hey, can you come and do a one-day workshop? We've got so many allied health professionals that are becoming very government reliant on government funding and these payment plans and all that. We want you to come and talk to them about maybe, and they're all in private practice, but wanted them to start to push that side of things, put their fees up. I said, yeah, okay. So I went and did the talk. I remember doing the talk, and I spent an hour into it, and there's this one lady who was sitting there, just giving me death stares the whole time. And I'm just, when you're talking, you just pick someone in the room that they hate your guts. Don't know why, but they just, there's something about them, they don't like you. And all of a sudden, I just stopped. I said, look, I've got to stop. And everyone said, why? I said, you. And I pointed out, I said, why do you dislike me so much? I said, I can just see it all over your face. And she went, we weren't all born with a silver spoon in our mouth, were we? Like you. and I said, the spoon that was in my mouth was so plastic you would not believe. And I didn't share that story from uni with her, but I just told her that, where I was from. And there just happened to be another person in the room who knew me from way back. And I said, hey, do you remember when this? And you remember when that? And he was pissing himself laughing, saying, yes, I remember all that happening. And all of a sudden, when she realized that, no, I'm exactly the same as you, I'm just a few years ahead, that I've made that mental shift to not stay where I was. I thought, I want to become better. And I think I was lucky that I came across Zig Ziglar in 1988. And I just went, who is this crazy person from Yazoo, Mississippi that I just loved? But once this lady realized that I was the same as her, I was just a few years ahead, just with my mindset, her whole tone changed. She was smiling. She was laughing at my jokes. And I think this is sometimes where people can listen to this and they can just put these blinkers on and block themselves off and go, nah, Jonathan, Tyson, you're full of shit as usual every time you two get together. I don't want to listen to this anymore. But I'm saying, just take those blinkers off and just think about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Something that came to mind. So you've been doing these group episodes about the good, bad, difficult patients,
Yeah.
yeah, and we talk about the A to D patients, both of us. And something that really came to mind was that hearing one of the people on that talking about us talking about D patients. It was as if they believe that when the patient comes in, we've already labelled them. We've
Yeah.
already gone. They're a D patient before we've had any interaction with them, which couldn't be further from the truth. Everybody starts off in our businesses as A patients. They've come to
Definitely.
us. They're an A patient. They're awesome. They walk through the door. They're awesome. It's just what then might go wrong during that says they're not the person for our business. And that's the same as that lady when you said that she'd already prejudged you, and until
Yeah.
she'd actually got to know you, did she actually realise no, you're not a D person to her. But initially she prejudged. There's no prejudging in our practices. It is they come in and they're awesome, but it's as you say, it's what people think is being said rather than actually what is being said and what actually happens. I think there's this blinkered vision, as you say. They don't take aboard. This is a multifaceted thing when we're talking about businesses and how to be successful and how to be good podiatrists. I think we get labelled very easily, both you and I.
I agree that it's funny that I go and do this talk for this lady who doesn't like me because she's already pre-labeled me as being someone who was wealthy and born with a silver spoon in my mouth. 10 years prior to that, I'm not allowed in someone's house because they pre-labeled
Yes.
me as being a thief.
Yeah. So where the problem lies isn't with you and how you portray yourself, which is what others will make you feel like.
Prejudging.
It's just them prejudging. Yeah. So it's not an error in us. It's not a fault in our behaviors. It's just we are who we are. And how others see us, that may appeal to them or it may not appeal to them. But at the end of the day, we're here trying to help other people.
Yeah, and when you talk about the D client too, what I find funny, yeah, same thing. Somebody walked in my clinic, I never prejudged them. I didn't care what they were wearing. I really just didn't care. I would judge them based on compliance, how they spoke to me, their mannerism to everybody else. There were all these determining factors. But what I like to point out to people, a D client to me might be an A client to somebody else. And this is
Yeah,
exactly
absolutely.
how banks and finance companies work. You go to your local bank branch and they look at you've been bankrupt 3 times before, you've got no savings, and you want to borrow money for a car. They're going to go,
Yeah.
no. They're not saying you're a
Mm,
bad person. They're just saying on their criteria, you're a D client to them.
yeah.
D client doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. But to another
No.
finance company who's going to charge 27% interest, they look at you and they start rubbing their hands together going, oh, you're exactly what we want.
Yeah,
Because we know
absolutely.
that more than likely you're probably going to make your repayments, but you're going to be making them at a lot higher interest rate. But we are taking a risk. So therefore,
Yeah.
we're going to charge it. So their A client is somebody else's D client. Their D is their A. So it's who's a good fit for who.
Yeah, it is. And if you remember all that time ago when I recorded that first podcast episode, the Work Smart Not Harder one, which was 006, I think, and you're now over 306. So
Yeah.
it's all that time ago. And I talked about these A to D people, and we've got them in our lives. You're an A person to me, Tyson. You're on my A list.
Oh,
No,
that's
you're
nice
an
to know.
awesome guy. You're an awesome guy in my life. Yeah. And we met Christine. She's an awesome lady in our life. But there are people who we don't gel with, who don't like what I have to say or don't like me, and there'd be D people. So all you do is you distance yourself from those, so that actually when you're engaging with your A's and B's, you're a happier, more positive person. If you surround yourself with your C's and D's who are constantly critical of you, then you're just going to be dragged down, aren't you? You're just not going to be a happy person. It's not going to be you, the best version of yourself that comes out.
And I think that's what happens with like I said, if you're perceiving patients when they walk through the door that they are not worthy to pay what you should be charging, this comes back to that whole prejudging. You've already prejudged them. Like I said, if you're looking at these people saying they can't afford to pay this, and I tell you right now, if they knew that's how you thought about them, I don't think many of them would be happy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So this is this whole point about it doesn't matter where your business is located. That's not where the most important thing is. The most important thing is you getting your head in the right place to
Yep.
deliver your business. You can choose whatever location you want for that business, wherever you're going to be at your best. Really, wherever you're going to be the best version of yourself, wherever you're going to be happiest. So I always say my clinic could be so much busier and I could employ lots of podiatrists if I moved it to a city centre. Would
Yeah.
I be as happy there as I am in a quiet market town, in a property that was built in the 17th century, which is beautiful property? Yeah, I don't know that I would, and I'm quite happy where I am. And that enables me to be the best version of myself at work. And so when you do that, when you get the location that suits you, then you build your business that will deliver that great value proposition to the public and you market it, then it really doesn't matter where that is. Hence that restaurant that we talked about in the middle of nowhere. They just love the location. And when you see the location, yeah, absolutely, I can see why that would be the case. And they just go out there and they market because they get awards and they get a good reputation and they deliver an excellent service, an excellent produce, and they've built themselves. But they couldn't have done that if they didn't market themselves. Nobody would have heard of them. To go out and market on that, and that's what's made it such a successful business. And yeah, just where your head is at, that's the most important thing for your business.
Yeah, just picturing there's going to be certain podiatrists that are going to listen to this and they're just going to be squirming in their chair, feeling really uncomfortable, that they would not have enjoyed this episode. But if we've got this far, which has been, I think it's been fantastic. So Jonathan, I want to thank you for coming on here and talking about this particular subject. It's, like I said, I got to share a story that I haven't shared before, which I'm still a little bit...
Thank you for sharing. Thanks for the honesty, Tyson.
I tell you, I've had some things. I have shared that story before, but not on the podcast. I do this talk that I've done a couple of times. I've done it at a few different events where I was asked to get up and do this talk, but it was just about me as a person going through from where I was to where I got to or whatever. And I tell there's about 4 or 5 like parts of my life, from my dad dying to other things that really shaped who I am. But I've never shared that whole story with a podiatry group, which I will do one day. I will do that. I think the talk's called Resilience, that I will share one day. It's a 45-minute talk, but I get upset every time I do it though. It's a tough one. Anyway,
but once you've done it, then it's going to get easier for you to do it again, isn't it? It's just the way it goes. Yeah.
I've done it a couple of times. It's not easy.
If you remember when on that talk on Foot and Ankle show that I did, I started off with this as my introduction. I don't know how well you remember this, but I said, for over 25 years, I've been running my own businesses. In that time, I've survived 2 recessions, mortgage interest doubling to 15%, negative equity of 25%, voluntarily giving away half my estate twice at the end of relationships, even close to bankruptcy. Been bereaved more times than I would wish on anyone. I've survived redundancy from NHS, loss of lucrative contracts, plagiarism of a successful business in its infancy, betrayed by a former colleague, fraud at a high level that is hard to imagine, and public vindictive attacks on my character and professionalism. But I've also thrived. I've thrived on helping others, fixing feet, giving, caring, sharing, growing, transforming personally and professionally through achieving things I never thought would have been possible. All of this confirms to me that the most important business message that I can share with you today is what matters is where your head is at. That's
a fitting way to finish. Where your head is at.
Like that.
There's a song, isn't it? Where's your head at?
Where's your head at?
Okay, well, that's enough singing from us. So, Jonathan, thank you very much for coming on, and I look forward to talking again very soon. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Okay, bye.